Susie, are we good? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the meeting to order tonight, Monday, April 21st, 2021. I've got 7:02, and if we would please stand and start us off with a pledge to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Just as a point of information, I am Deputy Supervisor Dave Condon, chairing the meeting tonight. Supervisor Marin is on Zoom with us live, and also Mark Terrian from Labella is joining us via Zoom tonight. At this time, I would ask Karen Bodine, Town Clerk, to please read the notice for our public hearing.
The legal notice for the adoption of the 2021 Sanitary Sewer Master Plan for expansions of the Consolidated Sewer District and associated amendments to the Town of Victor Comprehensive Plan, scheduled for the 12th day of April 2021 at 7 p.m., was published in the Daily Messenger newspaper on March 26, 2021, and a copy is available in the Town Clerk's office.
Thank you, Karen. At this time, maybe before we start, Mark has done an awful lot of work on this from Labella and worked in conjunction with board members and some of the other engineers. Mark, would you like to give us a little brief overview of what this is all about?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you. Mark Terrian from Labella Associates. So it's a long, somewhat detailed, and perhaps in some instances tortuous, but valuable nonetheless document. I'll just give the briefest of introductions. The inputs to the document, there are three primary inputs. The 2016 Farmington Victor Sewer Study that preceded it, the 2015 Town of Victor Comprehensive Plan, and then the system as it is now, including the system as it was revised or modified by the recent Auburn Trail project. So those are really the three primary inputs. It looks at the entire system as well as potential areas where the system might expand within the town by dividing the town into 12 different areas. Each one of those areas, because of the level of detail, has associated with it its own executive summary. So if one were interested in looking at a particular area to find out what the study found in that area, what it's recommending, what potential expansions might be available, one can do that simply by looking at one area of interest only and not having to look at all 12 areas or comprehend the entire document. There's two primary outputs. The primary outputs are a sewer map that delineates the existing district and also identifies potential areas where the district might be expanded, as well as identifying those where it ought not to be. That map is an update to a similar map that was presented in the 2016 Farmington Victor Sewer Study. There's a revision, the other primary output is a revision to the recommended density overlay changes, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about this later this evening under privilege of the floor. The recommended changes to the residential density overlays presented in the 2015 comprehensive plan are modified in this plan, and so that's another primary output. There were two subsidiary outputs in the plan or recommendations in the plan, and even though it's only in its draft stage, those have actually been implemented. One involved a potential imposition of one-time connection fees, and the other one was a recommendation regarding sewer system management and the appointment of town officials responsible for coordinating activities relative to the sanitary sewer district. I think that's it. I could go into more detail, but I'd probably be talking all night, so that's probably a good place for me to stop.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you, Mark. At this time, I will ask if any members of the public would care to speak for or against this. Susie, do we have anyone online? No. All right. At this time, then I would entertain, do any board members have anything to add or questions?
No.
At this time, I would ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I failed to mention the emergency exits before we started our meeting. Obviously, if there was an emergency, please find the nearest exit. And also, when you have privilege of the floor or questions for the board, please come to the podium. There should be a little button at the bottom. Make sure your mic is on so we can hear everybody. At this point, I'd like to look to approve the meeting minutes of March 22nd and March 29th, the special meeting minutes that we had to approve the one resolution. I'd entertain a motion to approve those.
So moved. Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Good. At this time, I'd like to have the manifest number 7 introduced by Karen, please, town clerk.
Manifest 7 for 2021 in the amount of $90,757.61 has been reviewed by the Victortown Board with the following accounts charged: general townwide, general outside village, highway townwide, the lighting districts of Fishers, Brookwood Meadows, High Point, Cobblestone, Coil Ridge, Rolling Meadows, Stone Lay, and Legacy at the Fairways.
Thank you, Karen. In keeping with our full disclosure and Supervisor Marin's annual that he likes to do, there's expenses there that are in the range or exceeding $10,000. As you can see, Rochester Gas and Electric of $84,3528. Lehigh Hanson Stone for road repair of $62,6320. Diesel fuel $64,6250. And then we have our court audit of $7725, and the CDW government replacing the computers, $11,055. I did appreciate Susie looking for the best possible price on those. Those total of the above-mentioned expenditures is $39,940.98. Total town expenditures minus the previous mentioned expenditures equals $50,816.63. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. This evening, we have several people who have privilege of the floor, and we will lead it off with David Reedman and Bob Cantwell. On behalf of David, we'll be providing a letter along with some maps for Southgate Hills, Section 2. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening. Where's the button?
I think you're on. It
It's
might-
on.
It's
We're good?
already on?
It's on.
Okay, great. Thank you, Deputy Supervisor. For the record, David Reedman. I'm used to saying Bob Cantwell's with me from BME, but he's retired.
Yep.
I've still found some use for him. Peter Vars from BME still with us tonight, and Alec Reedman, my son, and the next generation. So what we'd like to talk to you about tonight, and I will quickly turn it over to Bob because he can speak much more intelligently about this than I can, but it's a combination of property that we have under contract and will be closing fairly shortly. The Stryker property, and property that and that Stryker property is along East Victor Road. I think you are all familiar with where that property is. And then property along Boughton Hill Road that my sister and I still own, and I think what Bob is going to take you through is transferring some of the development rights around to create development on the Stryker property that is not unlike what we've done on Southgate Hills. Southgate Hills at this point is virtually sold out. I think we have 3 unsold home sites left. It's been a great neighborhood. I hope the town feels the same. And so we're looking to continue that pattern of development here and minimize the development that occurs along County Road 41 or Boughton Hill Road. So with that, I will turn it over to Bob, and he can walk you through what our thoughts are. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Despite the fact that I'm retired, there's no place I'd rather be on a Monday night than,
I'm sure.
than here. So again, as David had indicated, we have 4 total parcels, 3 of which are owned by David and his sister. That comprises approximately 37 acres. And then the Stryker property actually is split by East Victor Road and has basically 11 acres on the east side of East Victor Road, and that abuts the Auburn Trail, and then approximately 10 acres on the west side of East Victor Road. So the total acreage for all of the parcels is 58.3 plus or minus acres. As David indicated, the frontage that they own of the property on Boughton Hill Road, just from the standpoint of context, that's approximately 2,000 feet of frontage. So those parcels are fairly large. Again, do have a significant amount of frontage on Boughton Hill Road, which will come into play in a few minutes as we discuss that. As David had indicated, Reedman Acquisitions is in the process of just completing Southgate Hills. That actually has frontage on East Victor Road. It's the cul-de-sac that's essentially at the top of the rendering that's shown there. Again, 28 lots. It should also be noted that the sewer to serve Southgate Hills was actually extended from the intersection of Fieldcrest Lane and East Victor Road, basically in a southeasterly direction, not only to provide gravity sewer for Southgate, but also we did extend the limits of that sewer to the southern limit of the frontage of Southgate Hills. And then I think as we had discussed at an informal meeting a couple weeks ago, there have been other sewer parcels that have been added to the sewer district to anticipate the future extension of sewer up East Victor Road. As far as the existing zoning, the properties are zoned R2. All of the parcels of what we're presenting this evening are in the A overlay district, which obviously allows 1 lot per 3 acres. As David had indicated, our purpose in being here tonight is simply to request the board's consideration to modify the applicable residential overlay district development standard to overlay district B, which would allow for 1 lot per 2 acres. The bottom line there is that we would go from 19 lots under the existing overlay district calculation to 29 lots. As Mark had alluded in his this proposal is consistent with what is in the 2015 comprehensive plan, and I won't belabor that. It's essentially the concept level future land use potential density changes, which is Exhibit 8.16. It's also interesting to note that the properties immediately to the north, essentially on the golf course, Victor Hills Golf Course lands, as well as the other infill parcels along East Victor Road are also recommended to be considered for the residential B overlay district as well. And then I don't know whether, I have not seen certainly Mark's plan, if I understand where there could also be some other modifications to the change in overlay district zones, but the 2015 comprehensive plan actually showed the parcel, I believe it's approximately 90 acres to the north of the Auburn Trail, is actually was proposed in that exhibit to go from the least density to the highest density. So it would be the A overlay district to the C overlay district. So I have to assume that was due to the sewerability and the relative availability of public sewers in that whole area there. Susie, could you please call up the conventional concept plan exhibit? Thank you. So this is the classic case of a conventional concept plan. We had prepared that simply not as something that David would be interested in implementing, but as simply as an exhibit that shows what could be done under existing zoning and the existing overlay district A within the context of the parcels that are on the map. So for example, the Reedman property shows 12 lots within the approximate 37 acres, and then the Stryker property shows 7 lots within the 21 acres, and that's just simply a mathematical calculation to distinguish the conventional plan yield, if you will, for that plan. Again, the other purpose that we had prepared this for was simply to demonstrate the under existing zoning that it might not be the most desirable plan for the town to see implemented. There's obviously many references to clustering and smart growth and conservation subdivision design, for example, in the comp plan, which we 100% support, and I'm sure that the town engineering and planning consultant would agree with, so that this I don't believe represents that smart growth approach to preserving not only the visual buffer along Boughton Hill Road, which has always been a fairly sensitive thing with large lot development on a large majority of the up and down along Boughton Hill Road. The other thing that's interesting to note on this conventional plan is that the 12 lots on the Reedman property would all require individual septic systems because of the elevation doesn't work, and then actually there's a couple of stream crossings that would be a little bit difficult to provide sewerability to it. So again, we just the purpose was simply to provide a plan that met all of the open space numbers and densities. And again, I think I mentioned the individual driveways would also be shown on this as well. Susie, could you please do the sustainable Victor cluster concept plan? Okay, so that's
That's what we're
the,
looking at right here.
correct, yep. So that's simply a black and white with a little more specificity, shall we say, with lot areas and dimensions and things of that nature on the plan that we would like to see implemented. Again, it shows 29 lots. What this plan does, it does in fact, what we believe, it does meet the objectives of the smart growth and conservation subdivision design. And what it also does is provides a majority of the two neighborhoods, shall we say, that are accessed off of East Victor Road would both be able to be served with public sewer. So that the large estate lots, the 4 large estate lots along Boughton Hill Road would still need to have individual septic systems, but these are 5 to 7 to 8 to 10 acre lots that would be also allow for a little bit more of a sensitive feel towards preservation of wooded areas and things of that nature in that Boughton Hill Road corridor. I think the other thing to note by comparison to the two plans is that the amount of disturbance also for this plan on the Boughton Hill Road corridor would be certainly less than on the conventional plan as well, because again, we're clustering the development onto the two individual neighborhoods coming off of East Victor Road. The lot standards for those two neighborhoods are consistent with what David's portraying of the success of Southgate Hills has been. So those are absolutely consistent with those. They would also all be served not only with public sewer but also public water. The two neighborhoods would be proposed to be dedicated town roads. So we have one cul-de-sac, and then the second road would be a loop road through the site. One of the options that we did look at was a second cul-de-sac, but in reading through the comprehensive plan, we understand that the town's preference for not having or reducing the number of cul-de-sacs wherever possible. So that's where we had the two connections to East Victor Road. The other thing that this plan does is it provides along the eastern neighborhood along East Victor Road, it does provide an area of open space. It's not necessarily, where it could, it could be, active recreation or things along those lines, but it could be a passive area that would be landscaped and, maintained very attractively as the foreground for all of the homes that actually front on that. So that would be likely be a homeowners association or deed restricted, some approach there. The other thing that we had talked about is the cluster plan shows a proposal to dedicate a parcel all the way on the north side of the site on the east side of East Victor Road, along East Victor Road and the Auburn Trail. We have shown an open space parcel with the intent to potentially dedicate that to the town. That would allow for an improved parking area for users of the Auburn Trail. And then we had also talked about the potential for some additional enhancements. Maybe there's a few benches. Maybe there's a kiosk there for maybe some of the history of the trail itself. Maybe there's a small structure, shade structure, something along those lines. So I think it's an opportune area from a locational standpoint to show that.
About how much frontage is that, Bob? Yeah.
That's probably, 300 feet of frontage on the trail itself.
Yeah.
Probably about. So that simply as a placeholder is approximately 1 acre in size, but there was nothing necessarily magical about that.
No, I was
figure.
I was trying to just visualize, I was thinking about how many cars you could park there if they wanted to park and walk the trail, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think the existing parking lot further down on Break-A-Day Road probably has enough room for maybe 10 cars or something like that. And it's a little funky with the grade and,
Yeah.
you know, the erosion and stuff like that. So, so that's that. I think the other thing, David, you know, touched on the success. I think it's, you know, I'll let him kind of chime in on the nature of the market appeal and the absorption of the market appeal relative to who's actually moved into Southgate in terms of the buyer. So I don't know if you want to comment on that, Dave, relative to, you know, empty nesters and things of that nature.
Sure. Actually, it was kind of interesting. I and our market research suggested that when we built Southgate with the proximity to the Auburn Trail and the Victor School District, that this would be a very attractive neighborhood for young families. And the reality is, I think we've sold 2 homes to young families, and it's been predominantly empty nesters, who we market to kind of across the spectrum. But there are, in that spectrum, there are those who want to live in a more multifamily environment, and there are others who still want a single-level floor plan. So that's predominantly what we have here at Southgate. In fact, if you drive in, other than our model home, every home on the left-hand side of the street is a single-story floor plan. Downsize a little bit on the size of the home, single-level home, but still want a decent-sized piece of property for to take care of and to enjoy, and maybe they've got some pets, et cetera. So it has been 80%, 80 to 90% thus far has been an empty nester buyer that has gone into Southgate, and we don't see that stopping.
All those homes will have full basements in them?
Yes, sir. Yep.
So I think, again, we appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight so quickly to solicit your feedback and any comments that you may have. We understand that moving forward, if the board is so inclined, would be a similar to a rezoning approach as far as the modification to the overlay district. So we're just really looking for feedback, and we look forward to proceeding with the next step. So,
How many acres does that leave with, I'm trying to just get the spatial relationship. How many acres does that leave with Stryker's original parcel? Like, he'll be like smack dab in the middle of Southgate now, right? Yeah.
that's a separate parcel currently.
I know,
I
know.
I think it's about 5 acres.
Between 5 and 10.
Is it between 5 and 10? That's what I was thinking, probably.
I think it's over 5, but it's deep.
Yeah, it goes back pretty far.
Well, you got to cross the road a little bit too as part of it.
Right.
Approximately 5.2 acres.
Okay, all right.
The only question I had was, I'm certainly not an engineer. The only question I have is with the bend in the road there and the proximity of those 2 streets, they look like they're probably about maybe 100, 150 feet apart. And then with the bend there, it's about 200 feet from the bend. From a safety perspective, are there potential issues with opposing roads? You're pulling out and you have a turn in the road. I don't know if that was considered or if that really is a non-issue. I can't really picture without being there that turn on East Victor Road. But note those to the south. So
right
those
there.
2 there, because that looks to be about 100 to 150 feet, opposing directions with a turn just south of there. I wasn't sure if that, you know, from an engineering perspective, if there was a safety factor that would be problematic there, or if that simply wouldn't be the case.
Yeah, we'll have to
Okay. I mean, looking at that, that was really the only question or thought I had.
The grade is fairly flat, but it's a horizontal.
Yeah. And it's a pretty good bend coming around that house, too, so, yeah. Any other questions at this time? No. All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Next on the agenda for privilege of the floor would be Mr. Mark Tarian from Labella, who's going to talk to us a little bit about land use map.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you tonight. My comments tonight actually have some connection to the Reedman-Southgate proposal. They also have broader application, however, to other similar proposals that either might have come before us or could in the future. And they also, as coincidence would have it, have some connection to the updated sanitary sewer master plan that was the subject of the public hearing earlier this meeting. So I'm not going to address the Reedman-Southgate proposal directly, but some of what I'll talk about will touch on that. And I should probably thank Bob for the great introduction, because he's already introduced a lot of the facts and circumstances that I'm going to have to go into now. So there's a few underlying facts that I need to remind everybody of to make sense out of what follows. 3 or 4 of them. And the first one is that the zoning districts that appear on the official zoning map, such as that designate districts such as commercial, industrial, residential, and such, are supplemented by a second map that delineates these 3 overlay districts that Bob's been talking about in his presentation, that limit the maximum development density within residential areas to either 0.33 units per acre, 0.5 units per acre, or 1 unit per acre, which translates, if you do the inverse, to 3 acres per unit, 2 acres per unit, or 1 acre per unit. So 3 different density levels. The second fact is the comprehensive plan that was adopted in 2015 recommended some changes to that map of those density overlays. And to use Mr. Reedman's site in the proposal we just talked about as an example, as Bob's explained, although it is presently within an overlay district designated for the lowest density, the 2015 comprehensive plan recommended that it be increased from the lowest density to the intermediate density. And that's true not just on that site, but in a number of other sites. Basically, any place that the comprehensive plan in 2015 recommended changes, there's now a discrepancy because those changes have never been implemented. So that's led to this difference or conflict between what's actually on the zoning map at this point and what is recommended and what people will identify in the comprehensive plan if they use that as a reference resource. To further complicate matters, there was a 2016 Farmington Victor sewer study, which, amongst other things, identified areas where the consolidated sewer district as it existed at that time might be extended. And one of the underlying resources that it relied on to come to its conclusions was the zoning district density overlays as they existed at that time and not as they were recommended to be changed in the comprehensive plan. And conversely, it's also true that the recommendations in the 2015 comprehensive master plan relative to density overlays and how they might be changed didn't reflect some of the engineering and related findings relative to potential expansions of the sewer district that were presented in that 2016 Farmington Victor sewer study. And so that was really the primary underlying reason for undertaking the 2021 sanitary sewer master plan that was the subject of the public hearing tonight, was to try and reconcile those two. We have these two documents, one adopted in 2015 and one adopted in 2016, addressing some of the same topics, and yet in one sense they were kind of ships passing in the night. So doing that, and as I said earlier in my comments during the public hearing, the two primary outputs in that 2021 plan that was being considered for adoption were a revised or new or modified sewer map that said, here's the district boundaries as they are now, and here are areas where we might consider extending the district, and here are areas where we ought not to consider extending the district. That was one primary output. And then the other primary output was a modification to the map that was in the 2015 comprehensive plan that suggested were's how the density overlays ought to be changed. So to be clear, and then I'll move on to the matter that we're actually going to be talking about and stop with the background. So to be clear, we now have three versions of the residential density overlays circulating in Town Hall. One's the version that's been in the zoning code and the official version since before 2015 that has not been changed. The second one is the version that would be in effect if the recommendations in the 2015 comprehensive plan were implemented. And the third one now is in the document that the public hearing was concerning earlier this evening, is what those maps would look like if the recommendations in the updated plan, that the sewer plan, 2021 sewer plan, were implemented. So we've got three different versions that we're talking about. So the pivotal issue that I was asked to describe to the board tonight involves those residential density overlays as they exist now, unchanged since before 2015, and the potential for them to be revised either as suggested in the 2015 comprehensive plan or as suggested in the 2021 sanitary sewer master plan that's still a draft but was the subject of the hearing tonight. And it's worth noting that in both instances, the potential changes described in those documents include decreases as well as increases in density. And I think you've been distributed with your package is two maps. One is the density overlay map as it exists now, and the other one is the density overlay changes recommended in the comprehensive plan. We did not distribute the more recent ones in the draft plan that was the subject of the public hearing tonight because, in a sense, it's just a draft. Anyways, the second map, the one that was in the comprehensive plan, identifies with cross-hatching in various colors where there are density increases recommended and where there are density decreases recommended. And it's probably also worth noting that this topic has come up before in proposals similar to Mr. Reedman's, noting that the comprehensive plan has recommended an increase to a higher level of density for the subject site despite the recommendation never having been implemented. So it's an issue we've been dealing with. From a purely administrative view, the circumstance of having one thing in the official map and something else in the comprehensive plan, and now potentially yet a different version in the 2021 sewer master plan, has raised the following questions with town officials. Does the town board find it in the town's best interest to implement the changes to the density overlays recommended in the comprehensive plan? And if so, does the town board intend to implement them as a group? A related question is, if so, does the town board further intend to implement the modified version presented in the 2021 sanitary sewer master plan rather than the recommendations presently in the comp plan? And then a related question would be, if the town board does not find it in the town's best interest to implement the changes to the density overlays, either as recommended in the comp plan or in the 2021 sanitary sewer master plan, should the comp plan and perhaps the draft sanitary sewer master plan be amended to delete those recommendations and via that way eliminate this kind of inconsistency or discrepancy that we've been dealing with? So LaBella met with and discussed various paths forward recently with Supervisor Jack Marin, Deputy Supervisor Dave Condon, and Kim Kinsella. And the point of me talking to you tonight is that I was asked to brief you on the sense and conclusions of those present at the meeting so that you can consider those and discuss them further with the other board members. So, and I'll do that in bullet forms. Here's kind of the output or the sense of those that attended the meeting as to how this circumstance ought to be dealt with. First, those recommendations that would decrease density in certain areas should not be implemented as a group. And in fact, there are significant concerns about enacting these at all, given the potential impacts to property owners. Second, although implementing those recommendations that would increase density in certain areas do not raise the same concerns relative to potential impacts upon property owners, there is nonetheless some concern about implementing these as a group and a preference that they instead be implemented on a case-by-case basis as they come up. Third, relative to amending the comprehensive plan to reflect the foregoing, the preference would be for a relatively straightforward amendment that, rather than deleting any of the recommendations, would instead note that the revisions that would decrease density were unlikely to be implemented except in exceptional circumstances and certainly not as a group. Note further that the revisions that would increase density were also unlikely to be implemented as a group, but much more likely to be potentially implemented individually as they came up. And finally, reference and incorporate the revised map of potential changes to the overlay districts as it is presented in the draft 2021 sewer master plan. So just to reiterate or summarize, I'll just repeat those three, what you might consider solutions, at least in the view of the folks that have already met and discussed it. Not take the maps out of the comprehensive plan, but note that the density decreases are not viewed very favorably and unlikely to be implemented except in very exceptional circumstances, and certainly not as a group. With respect to those that would increase density, note that they're unlikely to be implemented as a group, and also compared to the density decreases viewed more favorably and may in fact be implemented individually as they come up, either because they're being presented or identified as a necessary component of a proposed project, as we heard tonight, or in other instances. And then finally, the master plan, again, in a very straightforward way, that should be, comprehensive plan should be amended to make clear that it's not the recommendations in the comp plan from 2015, but the more recent versions as they are presented in the 2021 sanitary sewer master plan that should be the guiding template or the changes that are being considered in the future. So I apologize for all of the background and detail. It's a complex project. The solution is probably far more simple than a description of the challenge itself. But that's what I was asked to brief you on, and I'm happy to try and answer any questions. I suspect there'll be further conversations about this.
Thank you, Mark. Any questions from the board? No? Okay. Well, we've got some homework to do on that. Thank you, Mark. Our third privilege of the floor this evening is Director of Finance, Barb Cole, who has a financial update that she would like to share with all of us.
Good evening. Well, I'm thinking we all can agree that 2020 is a year for the history books. But my purpose here tonight is just to recap 2020 as it relates to town finances and more specifically to the fund balance. In layman's terms, fund balance is the equivalent of savings for a homeowner resident. So, 2020 started off as such a good year. We had a reasonable budget in place with lower tax rate than the prior year. Sales tax revenues appeared to be on target or better than in 2019. Then along came the COVID-19 pandemic. Based on the town's heavy reliance on sales tax revenue, maintaining fiscal integrity was imperative. Sales tax revenue in the town of Victor accounts for more than 45% of the operating fund revenue. Projected sales tax revenue for 2020 was over $5.7 million. If 1 cent per $1,000 on your property tax rate raises approximately $20,000 in property tax revenue, your tax rate would increase by 50 cents per $1,000 for every $1 million of lost town revenue. When you take into account that Eastview Mall was closed, restaurants were closed, auto dealerships were closed, it was clear that we needed to refocus at the town level and modify our budget. Uncertainty prevailed. If you stop and think about the new words that are in your vocabulary this year, I'm sure you can reflect back and say COVID-19, PPP, PPE, many of the other words up on the screen were not in our vocabulary and became a part of that in 2020. We took the stance that there would be no unnecessary spending. There would be unknown expenses as related to unemployment and COVID-related purchases. We had closed offices. Fast forward to year-end 2020. What we did not count on, and fortunately happened, sales tax revenue rebounded. Mortgage tax revenue was more than $400,000 higher than 2019. This is a number that is hard to predict. Staffing cuts, postponed projects, and equipment purchases resulted in funds remaining at year-end. Based on the advice of our auditors, the fund balance policy was rescinded for 2021. Some of the reasons for this sales tax bounce back, if you will, stop and think about the big box stores. Home Depot did record sales. Walmart, BJ's. People still were out there spending money. If you are watching along from a packet that you had received earlier, I will apologize. I flipped two screens because I thought it made more sense. But as we look at this one, in 2021, budget appropriations for the A fund were over $5.3 million, the B fund over $1.1 million, and in the DB fund, $4.9 million. For clarification, the A fund is the general fund, the B fund is for expenses town outside village, and the DB fund is the highway fund or highway expenses outside of village. Our current town policy for fund balance reserves recommends a balance of 18 to 22% of appropriations. You can see the numbers here demonstrate the range that we would want to maintain fund balance at in order to meet that town policy. Thank you. As it stands at the end of 2020, we have excess funds in each of these, in each of the funds, A fund, B fund, and DB fund. We have the ability to move $2 million in the A fund into reserves, $1 million in the B fund into reserves, and $2 million into the highway fund into reserves, for a total of $5 million in those three operating funds. Moving these funds to reserves would maintain the fund balance at the 18 to 22% range of appropriations as established by the town board policy. One question I want to address that some of our residents would very reasonably ask: so why did our budget go up last year? Our budget is developed between July and October. We were still in a very uncertain time. We had not done the rebound on the sales tax revenue. We did not have the information in regard to mortgage tax. So we created the best budget we could, feeling that we were being fiscally responsible to our residents. On the next page, you will see where our current reserve balances are. In the A fund, or general fund, we have almost $80,000. In the buildings and land account, we have over $3.2 million. Town outside village, for equipment, we have $4,584. In the highway, for streets, we have $1,188,219. Equipment, $248,734. In the sewer budget, we have $9,500 in the village sewer reserves, and tonight we will be establishing a sewer reserve for town outside of village. Those funds will come from the new fees that are established for the sewer districts, or for the new residents to the sewer district. There are two different kinds of reserves that we can create. One's a type reserve, another is a specific reserve. A type reserve is very general and would enable us to use funds for a number of items. The specific reserves are just that, very specific and very restrictive in terms of what funds can be used for. I'd like to further mention here in regard to the current reserve balances that we have. Over the last couple of years, we have established a capital plan, and the whole goal of that is to be able to make the purchases and the improvements that we need to make, whether it be equipment or infrastructure. In an average year, our highway expenses for road reconstruction is over $1 million. These reserves enable us to keep our tax rate flat. Some years our expenses are less, and we put money into reserves. Some years our expenses are more, and we pull money out of reserves. By doing so, we're able to keep that tax rate flat for our residents. Some other reserves that you may want to consider. We could establish a reserve for retirement. In the past 5 years, the retirement contribution has been $450,000 and above. And in 2020, we saw an increase in the amount of the invoice for this, and that was based on uncertainty in the market, reduced interest rates, and some COVID influence in terms of number of retirees. Drainage improvement and stormwater infrastructure is another possibility for you to consider in the B fund. We have been doing much in this area in the last couple of years, and we anticipate more in the future. Snow and ice removal and road repair reserves is another one that we can consider. And workers' comp reserve fund, again, another one we can consider in the future. All of these funds could be put into reserves. However, I want to mention that we could use some of these funds to offset the tax rate. My concern for that, and my warning, if you will, is that those funds are a one-time shot. if we use those funds to offset our tax rate, next year, we're not going to have those funds to use. Very likely that we would see a rebound in tax rates. So again, I want to be very cautious in making significant changes to our tax rates. Reserves enable us to reduce costs of known future projects, and specifically the one-time project. The one that I think is probably easiest to understand, we are looking at the real need for a new highway department. That has a price tag of over $15 million. By putting these monies into reserves, the borrowing that we will need from the town when that time comes will be significantly reduced, and the impact on the taxpayers reduced as well. And again, I come back to, this enables our town tax rate to stay relatively flat over the years. I do recommend that these funds be moved prior to year end, but I also recommend that we wait for clarification from the federal government regarding potential use of anticipated relief funds from the American Rescue Plan. When we have clarification on that, we will be able to make much better decisions in terms of how we use this fund balance and into what type of reserves we put them. I would welcome any questions that you might have.
Well, first of all, Barb, I would chime in and say that your presentation's really very clear and easy for a layperson to understand, so I appreciate that. And I also think when I look at, I think being fiscally conservative and you know, pay as we go, the one thing I've learned in my 4 years on the board is things are expensive. And not only building, but you know, Mark needs a new plow truck, or as we cycle those out. I mean, you know, it's easy to spend $250,000 pretty quick on a new truck, or $1 million does not go as far in highway repair and as it used to. And you know, so I applaud you on that. And I think it's pretty clear that, you know, my personal opinion is that, yeah, I think we should probably move that stuff to reserve. Because I think it just helps us plan better in the future. And I think that it is prudent, and I think that our goal is to revamp our facilities, and you know, we're going to need that money down the road, so it doesn't really make a lot of sense to spend it when we know that we're going to be spending it sooner than later, probably. So that's just my opinion.
Barb, when we do get whatever we get for the American Rescue Plan, that's very specific about the things that you can use it for, correct?
That is my understanding. I believe there is some, you know, back to small businesses, things like that. I don't understand exactly what that will entail, but I do know in terms of infrastructure, they're talking broadband, sewer, and I believe there was a water, maybe.
Infrastructure related a lot, they say.
Absolutely. So
would that affect the amount that you put into reserve, or are you saying we should put what you've got here regardless of what comes from that plan?
Well, a couple of things to keep in mind. Money that's in fund balance currently in the A fund cannot be moved to another fund. If you have money in fund balance in the B fund, that can be moved to the highway fund, to the DB fund, but money in the DB fund cannot be moved back to the B fund. A lot of regulatory issues on that one. So, you know, I think in terms of the A fund, the buildings and land is such a logical place to put it, because we know if it weren't the highway department, we're still renting facilities for the courts. We don't know what our future is going to be for Parks and Rec, but we do know that whatever those price tags are will be huge in the future. So again, the more that we've put into savings, if you will, for that, the less the impact's going to be on our residents. So I'm not sure if I answered you the question.
You did, and I do agree with that. We probably should move forward and put those into reserves. I think we'd be lucky to even come close to building that same building that was $15 million 5, 6 years ago in the future.
Exactly.
It's probably very, it would be tough to do based on what other things are now. So, yeah, it is significant. We do need it, and it's going to cost more than what we thought it did, so.
Right.
No, I agree. I think that one of the things we were very fiscally conservative when we said 18 to 22% to make sure that we had that financial footing underneath us, just in case of things that happen.
Right.
Who knows what the next thing's going to be? I mean, obviously, you talk about COVID, that was this year. But there's always been something, some year that all of a sudden Mark needs more money for roads because something happens, or it's a terrible winter and we overspend what we thought we were going to spend on salt, or whatever it might be. There's always these things that come up year after year after year. You could probably go through a calendar and find them all. And I think we should continue to maintain that 18 to 22% as the buffer against the unknown, let's call it. So as much as possible, I think we should decide where we want to put it. But I agree, I think we should put it in and into the reserves and have it available for when we really do need it for something.
The other thing, I'd just like to remind is that it was not so many years ago when we were not in a cash buying position for our equipment, and we were borrowing, we were doing bands, and the interest on that is significant. We have since got ourselves back into a cash situation, and that just saves the residents so much from an interest standpoint. So, we have, in my opinion, really made some great strides, and would like to keep the forward momentum going.
No, I agree, because to your point about past history, we got into a bad spot. We don't want to go back there. So let's, kind of almost pedal to the metal. What we're doing is working. We're on sound financial footing. Let's continue to do that and keep ourselves there.
Thank you.
Barb. I'd also publicly like to welcome Rich to the board meeting tonight, who will be our new finance director, who's going to have some big shoes to fill as Barb moves on to having her Mondays off. But it's good to see Rich here tonight. All of you have got your reports from town officials in your packet. Barb gave a very nice overview of hers. Mark and Casey had one from the highway. Babette, historian, Parks and Rec. Brian's busy with opening of summer rec. And then the supervisor's report, Jack had a few things in there, and then Karen from the town clerk's office. Are there any questions on any of those reports? Any comments? And does anybody have any comments or concerns that they'd like to share with boards that they're currently serving on?
No.
Ready?
Actually, you know what, with the, for the ZBA, the zoning board, I did inquire with them as far as their intent to remain virtual or come back to live meetings. At this point, they're going to continue live meetings, but they did have some questions for me regarding, continuing to offer it virtually for those that chose to do it that way. So it sounds like at some point in the future, when they do return to live meetings, they definitely would like to have that option. And I kind of had described how we run these meetings, and it seems to be going relatively well. So.
Yeah, I think Supervisor Marin has been quite clear with all of the boards that if there's a whatever the comfort level is of the board, if they are happy to continue to do it virtual, if they want to Zoom, some have come back, but there's been no pressure from this board or from Supervisor Marin. You're welcome to chime in, Supervisor Marin, but I think we're continuing to do business as usual for those folks.
Absolutely, and I think that, seeing how they're conducting those ZBA meetings virtually and with the presentations that occur, it seems to flow very nicely. So I don't think that they're in any rush because it's working. So it's good to hear.
Yeah, I think we should commend all the boards for being able to completely function without missing a beat. They're taking care of town business on a regular basis, whether it's a hybrid, in person, or all Zoom. Things are getting done, and they're doing a good job. So I think all the boards need to be commended.
Absolutely.
At this time is public comment and concerns. Most of us look like we're employees. Are there any public comments online tonight, Susie? No. There are not. All right, then I would move on to our resolutions. We'll start with resolution number 1. And this is accepting a grant from Finger Lakes Municipal Health Insurance. I'm really pleased with where we're going with this Town Wellness Committee and the work that they're doing for our folks. And I'm really happy about this donation to help pay for some of the programs and the little prizes we give out and some of the little incentives. So it's really nice that we're able to secure this. I'll entertain a motion to accept that.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All right. Resolution number 2. Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good. I didn't think anybody would vote against $500 worth of free money, but, all right. Resolution number 2 is a service agreement with Toshiba Business Solutions. We've done some business with them in the past, and it looks like their rate is about the same, and we've been happy with their service.
Karen, is that right? Everybody's happy with the service? As far as you guys know? Good.
Yep.
Susie's happy?
All right. So I'll entertain a motion for that.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Resolution number 3 is a budget transfer to fund a part-time typist. This really is to bring, to get it in the right column for budget purposes to bring back our typist in the historian's office.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good. Resolution number 4 is a budget transfer for the sewer fund of 2020. And this is a reclassification of expenses to more accurately reflect the interest charges on a ban. And again, this was recommended during the audit, and it's clerical.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good. Resolution number 5 is a resolution, this is creating a type of sewer capital reserve. We have worked a long time on this to set up and start the capital reserve fund. As you know, there are connection fees involved, but we are still responsible for all of the infrastructure in the sewer district within our town limits. And this would really be a charge for, going forward, would be for new construction to really help offset some of those infrastructure upgrades and changes. And I want to thank Mark, Terry Ann and Labella, and Supervisor Marin, and really all the folks involved in bringing this about. So I'll entertain a motion for this.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And amendment number 6 is a creation of a type of sewer capital reserve fund. And this is, again, to put those monies aside, and this will help us with construction of sewer infrastructure in the portion of the town served by the Farmington Sewer District.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Resolution number 7 tonight is the adoption of the Town of Victor Forward Safety and Reopening Plan for Sports and Recreation during the COVID-19 pandemic. Reading through this, I want to publicly thank Brian for putting together really a very thoughtful and careful plan as we start to open up some of our programming, outdoor programming for our residents and for our kids for the summer.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Resolution number 8. This is a contract with Mutual of Omaha Insurance Company for short and long-term disability insurance. And it was spelled out of what the fees would be involved with that. This comes to us recommended from Finance and HR.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Resolution number 9. This is a contract with Cintas for our uniform and cleaning and building supplies with the various buildings and departments.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Resolution number 10. This is the authorization for Supervisor Marin to enter into a license agreement with TLC, who are currently subleasing our Victor Rec building over at Lehigh Crossing, and they're going to continue to do that through September. And we're not using that. We're not doing any indoor rec facilities for the summer, and TLC is interested in continuing with that agreement.
And just to clarify with that, so they'll continue the same exact use and contract that we've had previously, so that basically the whole building minus those
Correct.
areas for an office, they would have control of.
Correct.
Okay. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Resolution number 11. This is, it gives me great pleasure, really, to have this resolution. I know our residents have been anxious to find out what and if, and during this pandemic, we're starting to open things up a little bit more. As you've seen the sports teams competing, and there's discussion now of getting back to school for the kids and possibly the end of April. So this is a move in the right direction, I think, hiring some park and recreational staff for our seasonal positions. As you can see, they're spelled out there, and this would be really for our summer rec program.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Resolution number 12, the purchase of flower and plant materials to keep our place looking great. Obviously, down on 96. And that gets the first view coming in, but our park department does a really good job of taking care of that and getting the plantings done and cleaning it up, and this is something that they've been doing on a regular basis.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution number 13. This is a resolution from the Ontario County Board of Supervisors, and they are looking for our support as they solicit proposals for countywide emergency services study. As you know, that's been a little bit of a hot button in our community, and continues to be so. And they're going to look not only through the state, but they're also going to look out of state. And they are committed to looking at different ways of doing business, I guess, as you would say, for emergency services. And they just, this resolution just comes before us to say, yes, we definitely are in favor of having them look at something and possibly coming up with some possibilities for us in the future.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Resolution number 14, the intermunicipal cooperation agreement. This is to share the cost of the tax assessment litigation. As we work diligently for that, we now have a resolution here in which the county and the school district will help offset some of the costs of that litigation. So I commend Supervisor Marin and Director Cole from helping to bring this to fruition.
I just had one question, just from my knowledge being new here. Just to confirm, we cover 50% and then the other two continue, or 25 each.
We used to cover 100%, and they could opt in, right, Barb? So we used to cover 100%, even though the school district would be the largest beneficiary.
So I guess, and that's why I asked the question, so I guess I almost rescind a little bit of why I asked that, because it sounds like it's better than footing the whole bill, but when I read through that initially, I said, the school district certainly has the most to lose or gain from this.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
There absolutely was no requirement
Right, they're not bound by law to do that. But I think they also realize the fact that it's extremely important, and you want good representation, and they want to make sure that, it's...
At the end of the day also, if we don't do this, it puts more money back on our local taxpayers anyway.
Exactly,
So,
exactly. So, That's good. Thank you, Drew, for asking those
They
questions.
wanted us to fight on their behalf.
Right, right.
I'll make a motion to approve that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Resolution number 15, this is a resolution to accept a escrow establishment for the Scout Reserve Subdivision Phase 2. It's been looked over and approved by our engineers from Labella and our Director of Finance.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for being patient as I moved a little slowly. I realize now I kind of push Supervisor Marin on those pretty quickly sometimes. I'll be nicer in the future. Anyway, at this point, is there any public comment or any other unfinished business out there? Susie, do you have anything? Okay, well then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.